Hey everyone, Stefan Burns here. Right now, we are in the midst of an incredible transition for humanity, the Earth, the solar system, or perhaps even the entire cosmos that's going to take us to completely new dimensions of understanding and consciousness. This is what I believe. This is what many people have been discussing specifically for 2025, 2026, and you can even zoom out for the entire 21st century. There are a lot of different data points suggesting that this is occurring. And today we're going to go interstellar and intercellular. We're going to be exploring the cosmos. We'll talk a lot about 3i Atlas, these new comets that are flying in, and a lot more. And to have this conversation, I'm joined today by Pam Gregory, who many of you know and love. She is one of the top astrologers on YouTube, and she's been practicing astrology and reading into the energies and exploring the realm of consciousness and also spirituality for many decades now. So it was an absolute pleasure to have her on the channel. This video is also uploaded to her channel, so you can also go there and show your support. But we go into a variety of topics. We spend quite a bit of time discussing this transition period that we're in right now that's bounded by the two Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. The first one in near conjunction in the summer of 2025, the final conjunction, February 2026. All these comets that are flying in, and specifically we spend a lot of time discussing 3i Atlas and how this interstellar object seems to be triggering an awakening for humanity and also helping us to undergo this metamorphosis process. And perhaps this is unlike anything that we have ever experienced before. This could be a wave on a 10,000 or even 100,000 year time scale. There is evidence supporting that. So we go into that. We also go into health and wellness, our spiritual journeys, and just in general, the energy and quality of the time and the direction that is going. So this is a very wide ranging conversation that we had. I would highly recommend that you watch it. You'll see sides of myself and also Pam that you may not have seen in our normal videos. And we are really approaching this topic of 3i Atlas and the current energies of our time from a very holistic perspective. So I think you'll find a lot of enlightening aha moments throughout this video, and perhaps it may even trigger a paradigm shift within you. That is at least our hope and our goal. There's some good information, but also so much more than just information. There's also an outpouring of love. So we're very happy to have created this space of exploration, awe, wonder, and love for each and every single one of you. And without further ado, Pam Gregory and myself on 3i Atlas and so much more. Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Stefan Burns, and today I'm joined by the best, Pam Gregory, UK's top astrologer, the Queen of Britain, of England. No, she's just loved on YouTube. She has amazing astrological forecasts and videos and advice that she gives, and also just has a wonderful aura to her and life experience. We're all blessed to have her with us. And so she's here on the channel. We're talking about a bunch of things, talk about what's happening in our interplanetary interstellar neighborhood, and also what's happening in this consciousness field and the spiritual revolution that it seems that we're in right now. So welcome, Pam.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stefan. It's a joy to be with you, and you are rocking it. So, yeah, just love what you're doing. You're doing some fabulous work and really leading edge in terms of space weather. So, God bless you, and you thoroughly deserve this meteoric rise that you're going through. I never miss a video of yours, actually. So, great honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. God bless you too. God bless everyone watching. And yeah, the spiritual revolution has begun. I don't think it actually ever stopped. I'm reading right now Cosmos and Psyche by Tarnas, and he talks about how every astrological cycle, or this just conjunction cycles, for example, and we'll use Pluto and Uranus in 1965, that one, 1965-66, how everyone born after that just has that like baked into them. And that made a lot of sense to me. It's like, oh, okay, because I feel all those energies. Like they're still very alive. And so, yeah, like this is not a new thing really, but it's just the next evolution of it.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing? That was the seed point, that Pluto-Uranus conjunction that's now coming to blossom in the trine right now. So all of that stuff about peace and love and anti-war and being in community, loving each other, that's what's coming to blossom with the Pluto and Aquarius energy now. So it's just beautiful to see, and really anchored by that Saturn-Neptune conjunction midpoint as well.
Yeah, and a lot of immense technological breakthroughs and like human achievements that occurred around that time, and also this widespread exploration into consciousness, both through um, really a flourishing of Eastern traditions in the United States, and that goes back even before to when there was a lot of Indian mystics who traveled to California and then kind of spread out, but also through a lot of experimentation into psychedelics. And I mean, there were some chemists that were making hundreds or even thousands of novel compounds and trying them out in their diary. And so there's just we were reaching into realms that we had never reached before. And now it seems that it's like a lot of the map has been created. We're not completely clueless as to our nearby field of consciousness and what exists out there, but now we have a bit more confidence to explore even further out. And it really feels like we're going interstellar now in our awareness. Do you feel that?
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%, Stefan. It's so interesting. That was such a rich period in the 60s. You had great books like The Tao of Physics that were coming out. And also David Bohm, who was a senior lecturer in theoretical physics at London University, used to have those all night long conversations with the mystic Krishnamurti. And if we go back, this unique kind of mini triangle that astrologers are talking about, and I've kind of done to death recently, the seed point for that, if we look at the original Uranus-Pluto conjunction, that was in 577 BC. And that was round about the time of, Buddha and Pythagoras, who were some of the first great thought leaders about divinity and consciousness. So you've got
Yes.
all of that coming to blossom as well at this time.
Yeah, it's interesting how it brings in, yeah, I mean, just that cyclical nature and the harmonic aspect of it too. Because I see right now playing out like how there could be a potential for like more war and like maybe even it amalgamates into a World War III. And we do have some like some omens with the comets, which are interesting to consider, or some of these other influences that we don't really want. But it seems that while those potentials are kind of there, we're more streamlining into the more benefic expressions of these energies and in a way that maybe it won't be so disruptive as some conjunction cycles are. Um, but we
And
do
I
have this
really
big conjunction coming up.
Yeah, and I really feel, Stefan, I'm sure you agree that it's all down to our focus and attention. Where we put our focus is what we create. And, it's such a, this is going to be such a lesson in mastery of our frequency going forwards, because it's all to do with that. And if we focus on the war potential, we'll get more of that in our reality. If we focus on the joy, the peace, the love, we'll get more of that. I think it's that simple. It's just a mirror, and we've got to be really strict with ourselves to navigate this period of time magnificently, which I think we will do.
So what are you focused on? Like what's really calling to you right now? I mean, you do your astrological updates, you have your own life as well, your community in your area. But like, what do you find yourself in your downtime, just like looking a little bit more into? What is that?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. So what I'm really getting into now is, how do I get out of my head into my body, into my heart, into my energy? So I just enrolled on a 2-year shamanic training course, which I'm going to absolutely love, to get into, really into the magic of nature in a bigger way. And also I've done breath work for 50 years, but I'm now doing an instructor's course on some very powerful breath work, which is a combination. It's called Soma breath, and it's a combination of yogic breath work, buteyko, which is holding on the exhale, which is how the Indian siddhis, or the Indian yogis, really started to develop some of their magical skills called siddhis was holding on the exhale. And that's when our healing potential really expands and the light in our body expands, and Wim Hof breath work. So it's very, very, very powerful. And I'm absolutely loving it. And I really want to get kind of out of my head, which is like a rat up a drain pipe most of the time, and into, my body and my heart. But I'm such a lover of nature. And every morning, absolutely non-negotiable, I'm out in ancient woodland with my neighbour's dog. I can't leave him behind because he's tapping his watch waiting for me. And we just disappear into kind of deep forest. And normally I don't see a soul. It's absolutely glorious. Sometimes I walk with friends, but I want to get much deeper into that sense of complete oneness with nature, into that sense of communicating with the trees, the birds. I sense it a lot with the animals already, but I would just want to kind of plunge into that in a kind of ancient Lemurian way, because I think they cracked that. They lived in harmony with nature, they didn't kill to eat. And that's what really calls me right now, that Lemurian energy. And yeah, bring it on. And I think if we do that, that's a pretty good place to be in terms of magnetizing in our future timeline. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I've also had some recent experiences of, I mean, my brain's very active and it's a gift, but also it's like the body has certain needs, and my kind of flow that I'm working on right now is how can the mind do its thing while the body is getting what it needs, its nourishment, and also the soul and the spirit. Like, what are those activities that kind of feed them all simultaneously? And I think a lot of people are here. Some people, of course, are going to be on the other side, but a lot of people are at the point where their mind is numbing the signals from their body, um, just for constant, like, novel stimulation in the brain. But, we have more than just the brain, and finding those things. And one of those things I feel like that is really engaging with the brain right now, is this interstellar object 3i Atlas. At the same time, it's capturing people's attention for sure, because there's been an explosion of interest on it, which, I mean, didn't really know this was going to happen when we first found in July. But I've also been like connecting into it a lot because of my just research into it. And it seems to me that there is a resonance between interstellar space and the interstellar environment, and that they are really one and the same. And don't ask me how or why, but the universe is fractal. And if you read into, for example, like Hans Alvin, who's a plasma physicist, there's a lot of evidence that interplanetary space and even like interstellar, intergalactic space has a cellular structure to it. So it actually forms like these little blobs and cells, and we see that. We have that data pretty good. But 3i Atlas is getting people's attention. I think it seems to be evoking awareness as to that inner environment. So it's almost like a back door, like through the brain, like here's all these videos which are interesting, which captivate you, but then actually, what are you now feeling? What's it activating? Are you getting that sense too?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great point you make, Stefan, because also if we just look at a simple birth chart in the same moment, that's a picture of the out there, the map of the heavens at the moment of your birth, and the most, the most personal, quintessential expression of your psyche, isn't it? It's outer and inner in the same moment. And I think the fact that we are discovering further and further out there in the heavens, which is always a characteristic when Pluto moves into Aquarius, but it's also reflecting the expansion in our consciousness. I think we only start to see these objects further out when our consciousness expands sufficiently to incorporate them. So yeah, I really am feeling this. And, so many people have said to me that when they connect to it, and I don't know if you felt this, Stefan, that they just feel this absolutely indescribable wave of love. I mean, I had a friend here who I hadn't seen for a couple of years, about a week ago, And she knew nothing about 3i Atlas. And I started to talk to her about it. She's a very tuned in, sensitive healer. And she just burst into tears. She said, the amount of love I'm feeling, I can't even express it. So, and a lot of people have written to me about that. And, you know, they're scattered all over the world and don't know each other, presumably. So I don't know if you're feeling that wave of love to the same extent, but I think that's a big part of what it's about, actually.
Well, what I can say is that I did a plant medicine journey on Saturday, and so that was really good. And I felt amazing afterwards. I was like, oh, I feel great. So, but during it also there was this, and I've been feeling the waves coming in already, but then this was definitely like the big wave. And yeah, felt that overwhelming sense of love. And I was connecting to 3i Atlas at some points during this too, um, and how it's asking us really to up level, and it's not demanding more, but it's encouraging more from us. But at one point I felt it really like in my body. And I find it interesting because it's performing its superior conjunction exactly with the sun on the 21st of October. It has its perihelion on the 29th. That'll be 1.36 astronomical units away from the sun during its perihelion on the 29th. On the 21st, it has a superior conjunction. So it'll be 3i Atlas, the sun, our moon, because it's a new moon, as you know, and then Earth. We also have this new comet that was found, which is C25 R2 Swan, SWAN. That'll be the closest to Earth that it will in its loop on the 21st as well. And in the true sky position, like in the constellation, 3i Atlas will basically show up during that October 21st superior conjunction in the legs of Virgo, the Virgin. And so maybe it's just because I've been thinking about this, but I felt that energy from 3i Atlas coming up through my root chakra and then actually into like the rest of my body and the whole chakra network. So I think it's coming in from that dimension. I mean, it's also the crown too, but at least in my journey that I had on Saturday recently, I felt that coming up, and it felt like it was then branching out and going intercellular and like working at the cellular level. I've noticed really big like shifts in my consciousness and self-awareness just in the past like month, and I think it's maybe partially to thank for that, but
Yeah,
personal
on
experience.
Saturday, it's really interesting you mentioned that. I was in the kitchen actually listening to Lee Harris, and it didn't seem particularly relevant to what I was experiencing, but I started to feel Kundalini activation that was very strong, going up my spine. I thought, wow, that feels amazing. And so, yeah, you've just reminded me that was Saturday as well. So I think this is just the beginning of what's to come.
Yeah, Saturday was a little bit of an interesting energy portal. So one of the things, we can get more into 3i Atlas. One thing I wanted to show really quick are these two comets that are flying by Mars,
Yep.
because it really seems like Mars is in the firing line. Like there's going to be a big archetypal, maybe rebirth of Mars. That's just kind of my sense, because we have this close flyby of 3i Atlas. That's the first planet it'll do a close flyby on the 3rd, and that'll get within zero point 0.2 astronomical units, specifically 0.195 astronomical units. It makes that closest approach. And then we also have these two comets, which right now are like for humanity are observational. Like we can see them. That for the ancients, they were too dim, but we have the technology, and so the universe only needs to show us what is at the limits of our detection for it to be relevant. So let me pull up this photo. And then I'd like your thoughts on just Mars. Like, what is Mars? What's happening with Mars? So here we have C2025 R2 Swan in the bottom left, and then above it, kind of along that angle, we have C2025 K1 Atlas, which is another one of these comets, which is in the inner solar system right now. We have a whole bunch of them. And then off to the right, that bright point of light is Mars. So like comets are omens of change and fated events, you could say. At least that's the traditional view. Like this looks significant to me in some aspect. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. And for me, it's all about reclaiming our sovereignty. I see Mars in its rulership of Aries very much about the inner authority, our inner sense of power, and reclaiming our sovereignty, and stop giving our power away to the external, because it's traditionally been, you know, aggression and war, and and we're absolutely done with that. A big part of moving forwards into these higher dimensions is stepping back into that sense of sovereignty. So that's very much how I see the activation affecting Mars, and potentially changing or shifting that archetypal meaning. How do you feel, Stefan?
Well, it's like not one comment, but two, right? If there was like three or four, then it's like, oh my God, okay. But it's not just one, it's two. And then actually it is three if you consider Three-Eye Atlas and its close approach. We may not be able to see it, but it's going to make that close approach. So it's like there's something big there. And then you pair that with the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in the 0th degree of Aries, if you go by Western. And then we also have Mars Cazimi coming up. I think that's December sometime. We have
Right.
Mars finally doing its new conjunction cycle after these two comets. So it looks like, oh, that's actually like right around January 6th, which is when we had this incredible planetary geometry, the alignment, which I think you're aware of,
Yeah.
active with Earth and Jupiter on one side of the sun and then all the inner planets on the other. So there's like this whole story that started to really express itself this summer with the close conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And now we're getting these comet flybys of Mars, and then we have the Cazimi, and then we have the final conjunction in Aries. It's like this, I just don't know how it's going to express itself, but it's going to be big, like beyond capital letters, I feel like.
Yeah, I really agree. I think it's a real rebirth for Earth, and a rebirth of our consciousness, a remembrance actually. But you know, so many people I've been talking to, Stefan, are all feeding into this same picture and the same timing. So, you know, I don't know how many of these you followed, and frankly, why should you? But they're all saying, they're all talking about the same time frame. You know, whether you're talking about Richard Rudd with the New Human, and he said this metamorphosis for humanity began on the 30th of January this year and will complete in 2027, whether you're talking about Lee Harris with the Future Human, whether you're talking about Dr. David Clement saying the tip of the first wave of this new consciousness is beginning at the beginning of December, whether I'm talking to Nancy Rebecca about her seeing huge galactic waves of energy peaking through December, January. Kelly Kolodny channeling Archangel Raphael, she said that the beginning of the gestation of the new galactic consciousness, the new human, was on the Aries equinox, the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, which is what Bibhu Dev Misra said was the end of the Kali Yuga. And Archangel Raphael has said consistently and persistently that the birth of this new galactic consciousness is on the 21st of December. So isn't it remarkable that Three-Eye Atlas is going to be closest to Earth on the 19th of December, never, you know, to our knowledge, having been anywhere close to our solar system before that we're aware of. I mean, that's pretty darn close, isn't it, as a target? 2 days. So they've all been saying these same things in their particular language. You know, Viviane Chauvet, who's Arcturian, has talked about being on the edge of this precipice jump in consciousness. And for me, I always felt we needed a game changer. I always felt we needed a bit of a jump. We were never going to get out of the God almighty mess that the 3D world is in a linear, logical slog way ever. There's got to be a catalyst, there's got to be a game changer, there's got to be a jump. And I personally think Three-Eye Atlas is that very thing because of the timing. It's just like God-given that it's landing, you know, in the same, exactly the same time frame that all these very clever, gifted people are also seeing as the tipping point, the pivot for humanity. And I see that Saturn-Neptune conjunction as the birth of the new reality, making real the dream, and the dissolution of the veil. And so, this is all within this whisper of time, these next few months that we're already in this chrysalis. So, either I'm wrong, but that means if I'm wrong, then all of those other people I've just referred to are wrong. And I think they're far too gifted and clever to say, well, they're all wrong. I truly think this is the birth of a new cosmic consciousness, galactic consciousness, which is going to really jump us to a different place. And I also feel it's like a systems upgrade for us. And I think it's potentially an upgrade for the energy grids of the earth. And I also feel, and again, this is coming from various people that are writing to me or I'm speaking with, there seems to be a potential for heart chakra activation here as well. Because it's going to be love, isn't it, that's going to carry us through to the next level. It's not going to be fear. It's not going to be polarization. It's not going to be war. It's going to be love. That's what was talked about with the Pluto-Uranus conjunction in the 60s. So I really feel incredibly excited by whatever this interstellar thing is, because it's come right on time in terms of, I didn't know it was coming, but in terms of all the conversations I've been having over the last couple of years. And then this thing arrives and you think, wow, that's a bullseye. 2 days away from the Capricorn solstice. I mean, from who knows how many billions of miles away. That's not bad as a bullseye.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you zoom out, that is quite remarkable because and then it also has the close approach to Jupiter. And yeah, there's just too many things when we're looking at from this more spiritual aspect to write off. And also, as it relates to this Saturn-Neptune cycle and its conjunction being significant, it, a wave takes time to come in. And so another conjunction, correct me if I'm a little off on the dates, but I believe it is a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction 2010 that occurred right in the same degree zone. Was it not?
Yes, absolutely. In April, wasn't it? About the 20th of April?
I I'm not exactly sure for that one, but I just know it was like 2010. It was like right in the 0 to 2 degree zone.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we'd have that one there, which is this very benefic and expansive and liberating Promethean energy and we just had our most recent one in 2024, which was I thought that was great. And I think it's still unfolding right now, but the fact that that occurred in the exact same zone in the sky shows that this wave coming in isn't just like suddenly, it's been slowly building up. And perhaps even we do have to look even further back to the Greeks and look at that as the beginning of the wave. Because I mean, modern Homo sapiens, like biologically modern Homo sapiens, have been around for 300,000 years or so. That's like the current estimate, something like that. And so, if in that perspective, the ancient Greeks, and I think he says 577 BC, or yeah, I mean that's like a blink of an eye. So perhaps this is even a larger wave of evolutionary impulse. That's what I felt during my trip that I had. I felt that this polarization between the genders is also a little bit false. And I mean, I don't know how fast evolution and like changing DNA can go, but this split we see in society already, this huge interest from certain people to not identify as male or female. They're all over the place, right? And whatever you think about this, it's clearly a trend. And we see other species on Earth which don't have like clear genders, and they're more, or they have both or whatever. And it seems that humanity is maybe adapting into just a higher expression of itself. And how that
Aquarius
relates
is
to I
very,
don't,
sorry, Stefan. Aquarius is very androgynous, isn't it?
mm, yeah. So I feel there's like this all this stuff kind of swirling around, and so it's not just technological, and there's this disclosure kind of narrative that's also unfolding. Though there's a lot of like just lies and misinformation there, but there's certainly like there's already like entities and aliens on this planet effectively. Like there's some things that are very, very strange, and some of them are out to help us, right? Spirit guides and others. And then there's certainly like malevolent influences, which we need to navigate around. And hopefully they just simply don't resonate with the new Earth that's forming. Earth seems to be releasing a lot and transforming these big earthquakes, as you know, which you've been fairly good at forecasting yourself with the astrology. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
you are ace at that. You are five-star world class at that, Stefan.
but if to then go to the next thing that's kind of on my mind is I just see a lot of people in fear. And here you and I are, and we may have our own struggles and everything, but I think we're pretty rooted in faith and how like it seems to me that one of the big things right now is do we choose fear or faith? And like what are your how is it that you're so optimistic and inspired and just ready for everything? I don't think you just brainwash yourself on this. Like there's something deeper to this, like this wave of I guess wave of faith. I feel like faith is so important right now that we all get on board with that. And
Yeah, just to hop back just very, very briefly to what you were saying about Jupiter and Uranus. I think we had that to the day on the moon landing day. Because
oh, 1965.
yeah, was it 65 or 60? Well, we had it on the, I'm pretty sure we did, because that was a huge consciousness awakening for people. And so that reinforces the point you were making, Jupiter,
And
Uranus.
you mean Pluto Uranus, right? In 65 at the moon landing, like Apollo
No,
or some
I
other
think
moon landing?
it was Jupiter Uranus. I'm pretty sure we had a Jupiter Uranus conjunction at the moon landing. I'm pretty sure, which was a big
Oh.
awakening for humanity's consciousness.
Oh, that's right. Jupiter was in that zone as well,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
one of the smaller cycles.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Virgo. So yeah, what do I do? I'm quite a simple bumpkin, actually. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I've got a kind of gratitude list. If I've slept well, and I thank the angels, and I thank my higher self, and I say, I live in love, joy, and bliss. And so I go through a whole routine of gratitude. I do quite a lot of yoga in the morning. Um, Weather permitting, I will have bare feet on the grass as well. I live in England, so you've got to be realistic about that. And then I always take my neighbour's dog out because, he and I put the world to rights. And that's very decompressing because we're walking in woodland, which is just, hundreds and possibly thousands of years old, that has so much history. And I just love kind of disappearing into the bliss and oneness of that. And I can go down through this woodland and cross over a stream that's a very tiny stream, but it's very well known in across Europe actually for dragonflies. And at this time of year, there's so many dragonflies and very rare butterflies around and lots of elemental energy. So I can just sit and kind of breathe that in. And it's just, and if it's a sunny day as it was today, it was just exquisite. And I just think, how lucky am I to wander freely, safely? And I'm very lucky. And yes, I used to live in London, so I've worked hard to get where I am geographically. But I just think I just feel so blessed and blissed out just sitting here in the simplicity of nature, watching the butterflies and the dragonflies. I just can't be grateful and thankful enough. And I think if you're grateful, it brings in more things to be grateful for. So, and I'm really strict with my diet, very nano about, I haven't eaten meat for 50 years, so vegetarian, organic, a lot of it raw. And I just kind of, I'm lucky enough to live in a little road backing onto an organic farm. So it's super quiet, you just hear birds song. And even though I'm working for the rest of the day, I'm in a beautiful sanctuary, I'm in a beautiful environment, and constantly tell the trees and shrubs in my garden how much I love them. And my neighbors may think I'm a crazy woman, but I'm used to people thinking I'm a crazy woman, so that doesn't really bother me. So, and I can stay in that bliss bubble. And I don't want to go to a city. I don't want to go even to my local town a mile away. So I have all my organic vegetables delivered every week. And that just works for me. So I can stay in this bliss bubble. And everybody might be saying, well, you know, it's okay for you. Yeah, but there were a lot of life challenges to get here. But I'm very happy, if I have to live in England, that this is the place I want to be. And I try, if I catch myself, because, you know, just like you, Stefan, people send you stuff all day long, or videos and stuff to watch. But if I find that I start to watch, and I can't even begin to watch 10% of them, but if I begin to watch them and I feel my frequency drop, I'll just stop. Because I know I've got to walk my talk, that my state of being is my absolutely top priority. And I will not let myself drop, because then the whole, you know, your energy is scattered, you give your power away, you know. And I had a very big health scare in June. I mean, it's a real shock for me in June. And I was just spinning for a couple of days. And then I thought, this is a personal test for me. Unless I get a grip on my frequency and my state of being, I'm going to create the timeline I don't want. And it wasn't a good one at all. It was a cancer scare. So I thought, I've got to get a grip. So I got a grip, and that's all completely disappeared now, because I created a different timeline. So I really, you know, I really do try and walk my talk day to day. Otherwise, I'd be a complete fraud.
Yeah, and it seems fear is kind of like a like more in the head, and faith is more in the body. And then also like the earth is there's a lot of, I mean, we're inflicting a lot of problems with the earth, environmentally and pollution and stuff, though. I know you've talked on your channel about how perhaps some of these remediations will unfold faster than maybe expected, which would be great. But it seems that the Earth herself is also, as a super consciousness, well ahead of this, and also working to express this and rise into this new uh, interstellar consciousness that's more connected and less confined. It's just more expansive and aware. But you mentioned before we were recording, you mentioned how you were trekking through the Himalayas and you had this amoeba that you picked up, and that it was this big health problem for a while. And if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But my question there is, and share anything you would like. But my question there is, having this thing in you, how did that change your consciousness? Like perhaps so it's
It wasn't good. Yeah, you know, because you know, it was an amazing trip. I was away for 5 months. It was in between living in Canada for 5 years and then deciding to come back to England, and to break myself into a lower standard of living, I decided to spend 5 months in India and Nepal, which did the trick. But you know, and I was traveling on my own, and it was one of the best things I ever did in my life. It was a huge adventure. And yeah, I was telling you before we hopped on, the first trek I did lasted about 7 weeks in the Himalayas. And this was a long time ago, before trekking was a thing. And I just didn't see another Western person the whole time. I went to the only trekking association in Kathmandu and said, look, I'd love to trek out to the Annapurna base camp. And so they gave me 3 Sherpas, and off we went. And the Sherpas didn't speak a word of English. And off we went for 7 weeks in silence, because they didn't speak a word of English. And it was a huge adventure. And we got up to 19,000 feet. And that was just, and I just fell in love with the Himalayas. You know, I know there's a past life there. And I went back another twice, and it was on the 3rd trip that I picked up a very rare amoeba. And that's when I was 26. So I spent 6 weeks in the tropical disease hospital, which is one hell of a place, actually, because, you know, there are even people with leprosy that are still in there, which is fairly rare. But anyway, so they just treat tropical diseases. So I was in there for 6 weeks, but they said, you know, we can't fix this. We'll give you bucket loads of antibiotics, but we can't fix that. So that took me on a very long kind of 39-year journey of, you know, a huge number of gut issues, and I was also very ill for 15 years with kidney infections and massive bucket loads of antibiotics through that time. And by the end of all that, my gut was just absolutely napalmed, and my microbiome test was down to 1 out of 10. So I was incredibly lucky, but I always knew there'd be a solution. I never lost hope. I always knew, and I met some amazing people on that spiritual journey, there would be something to fix it. And I was very lucky in 2018 because I had 2 fecal transplants that saved my life, because my microbiome score then jumped to 9 out of 10. And that's why I think
Oh.
when people say, gosh, you look younger now than you did, a few years ago, well, it's because of that. That saved my life. I don't know if I dare tell this story in public, actually, but it was terribly funny. I don't know if I dare tell it, but anyway, it was my first appointment at the clinic, and you have 10 implants for each transplant. So I had 20, but I don't know if I dare tell this, but the nurse met me on the first morning, and she said, "Good morning, Miss Gregory." And I said, "Please call me Pam." And she said, "Well, that seems a little overfamiliar for our first meeting." And I said, "Well, considering what you're about to do to me, I wouldn't worry, because you're going to see more of me than my friends have." But so there were some hilarious moments, and that saved my life. And I'm so incredibly grateful. But I think the thing was, I never lost hope. I always know there's going to be a natural solution to anything that ails you. And I think if you have that perspective of miracles happen, even though they may take a long time, miracles do happen. And I have to walk that whole period taught me an awful lot about positive thinking. And so I've had so many kind of other challenges in my life that are, too dull to go into. But I kind of got to the place of thinking, I'm not going to waste another moment of my life being miserable. Not another moment. I am going to do everything I can in every moment of my day to celebrate life, be grateful, and create the best possible future I can, and for others that tag along behind me, that listen to me, kindly enough. So that has been a great teacher for me to always live in positivity, I think.
Gut health's been really big for me as well, because there's some gut health problems on my mom's side of the family, and so I think in some aspects I've been given a little bit of ancestral healing to do there. And in many aspects, though, I think it's also for me just like I just bring greater awareness to it. So I think a lot of people aren't aware of their gut, and that's like one of the big things. And so I think of a few things with that story. Thanks for sharing. And I find it's like the microbiome and your intestines, all that, it's actually outside the body, right? Our body is wrapped around that. Like technically it's outside because you eat something and then just right out the other side, but we're just completely wrapped around it. So it's this idea of how outside factors and influences can be so powerful on us, who we are, and our body. But then also going even beyond that, how consciousness is not just the mind or the body, it's beyond that. And there can be other things in there that maybe it's very difficult or painful or there's issues, whatever, but maybe it's seeking to help us come to greater awareness of the field of consciousness that we exist within, and that there can be other consciousnesses pressing up against us that we become very familiar with, that we start to think is our consciousness. But if you really kind of like feel it for a moment and you're in that observer zone, which you have some experience with all the breath work, and now you're going to get even more with all the shamanic training and everything. Like, I think that is one of the things that Three Eye Atlas is bringing to our awareness, is that it's exposing how it's just shedding light on the field of consciousness in general, and that a lot of people have consciousnesses pressing up against them from all sides. Maybe it's from something inside them, maybe it's from their algorithm on some app or something, because these things also have like an interesting consciousness to them, the consciousness of the community and maybe even consciousness of entities in their area, or good or bad or neutral, whatever. Like we probably don't have to use good or bad terminology. Um, but it just seems to be bringing awareness to that. And so if if we have been a society at large operating from this place where we're not really sure what our consciousness is, and all of a sudden, boom, the spotlight gets turned on. It's like, that is clearly mine. This, that is not mine. And these are asking me all to make these bad decisions, poor decisions, or, keep me addicted to pain, let's say, or discomfort or depression. Well, focusing and just fully embracing your consciousness and tuning out that signal can radically transform your life instantly. So that seems to be where the instant shift comes from. Maybe that's how the catalyst occurs, because it seems that we probably need some massive awakening for some of these things to unfold, where people just finally reject these things which have been, influencing the collective for a very long time. But once we come to our own sovereign understanding of our consciousness and the collective consciousness of humanity, because there's the collective consciousness of like bees, that's a good one, but there's also the collective consciousness of other things which maybe aren't there to serve us, but to feed off of us, or things of that nature. So did this amoeba scare, like, did you ever feel the consciousness of this other organism?
Yeah, I absolutely did. It felt a bit like, did you ever see Alien, that film? There was this kind of strange being growing inside. So yeah, I did. And it felt very, very primitive, but it was kind of because I picked it up in the Himalayas. I kind of felt that there was still that past life connecting me, that the amoeba was connecting me back to that past life in some way. So, but I ended up not no longer fighting it or resenting it, because it took me on such a spiritual journey of the amazing people I met. I ended up being actually quite grateful to it as a teacher. And so I kind of made my peace with it and my thanks with it. But what you're saying, Stefan, I think is so true, that in this period of clarification, truth, awakening, where we suddenly shift our lens, we suddenly shift our perspective, I think it will bring about a much greater sense of spiritual responsibility that we each have to take, a sense of empowerment, sense of sovereignty, spiritual responsibility of, we've got to really live from the inside out, and be aware of what we're doing with our thinking, with our feeling, with our frequency, that is affecting everybody around us, because we infect each other with our energies, just like we kind of infect each other with a cold or whatever. But it's that sense of, I must be responsible for my own frequency in order to benefit those around me. I think that is part of this awakening too, because it's going to be much more about collaboration and community and care for others, service to others, not service to self. So I think what you've just shared there is part of that. And I do think there's going to be this kind of, this clarity, this truth, this awakening to a higher level of being. And it may be an electromagnetic function of 3i Atlas. I don't know. I mean, I'd be really interested in your thoughts on that, because inevitably, I would think, and I think you've talked about it, there's going to be some kind of electromagnetic disruption in the next couple of months, particularly through October and November, as this draws so close. Do you want to share how you're feeling about that too?
I think there will be. With all these comets flying in, it seems that we're well poised to have a lot of solar activity. I mean, sunspots right now are climbing. One of the numbers came in over 200. Another one was like just under 200. The highest count that we had for a monthly was back in August of last year of 216, according to NOAA. But these are daily counts I'm referencing. But yeah, we are kind of going up to a second peak of activity. And right now, most of the sunspots are exactly Earth facing at this moment in time. But they're going to keep rotating. It seems that they're actively growing right now. And so as these things get closer, 3i Atlas being an interstellar object, I don't know what it is. The others very clearly looking like comets. We see a lot of examples of solar activity and close swings of comets. Um, that could also be an additional catalyst because we see how solar activity just kind of in geomagnetic activity like just kind of gets people going. And I've seen that very clearly with my channel, just as a reference point, that like when there's a big X flare, people are like the videos are getting watched and the engagement's higher, and this is a very limited thing. But there's just it's interesting how things can be calm and quiet. It's like, how is it then, like, how do you get the party going again, basically? And this,
Electrification, isn't it?
yeah, the sun's the best at that. The sun can get any party going at any time. So I think that's what the what part the sun will play in some benevolent sense. I see that's the thing. There's this fear versus faith, and the fear mindset really seems to be these outside consciousnesses that are imposing, and they have operated on fear for a long time. Think evolutionarily, fear has been very useful. Um, and there's still some use to fear, but in terms of expressing yourself to the highest degree, and also if our consciousness just zips back up, if the body dies, let's say, and then we just get a new one, then there technically is nothing to fear. I was just talking to my friend who did a trip as well with DMT, and this is like 10 years ago or something. And she said that the ego dissolution process was nothing to be afraid of, and that was beautiful. It was her 20 minutes later coming back into her body and into density that was like the hard part and kind of the fearful part. So with this perspective, like maybe it is time for humanity to let go a lot of these fears that just no longer serve us, that seem to keep us in a smaller like bubble of consciousness and reality. And now it's time to expand beyond that. And I could see all these things working together to do that. I just really find it interesting how the timing again, it's like we had this close conjunction of three of Saturn and Neptune in the summer of this year, and now they're going to do their final conjunction next February. And then this is coming in exactly in the middle of that when they're dipping back into kind of like the patterns and energies that they've been in for a while, especially Neptune, Pisces, 14 years now. So it's really just really dynamic, and just seeing the amount of the sheer interest in it tells me that there's also something there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's why I feel it potentially can give us an upgrade in this kind of lull, as you've described it, between Saturn Neptune being exact to the degree, I think it was in August, and being exact to the minute on the 20th of February. And isn't it interesting that when 3i Atlas is behind the sun in this superior conjunction, that is the last day that Neptune is in Aries this year. So 0, 0 of Aries, and the next day it tips back into 29 of Pisces. So it's like all that pure potentiality, and it's just like a wave coming back from the shore to welcome in whatever 3i Atlas is going to gift us before the launch. I see it, I find it really interesting, apart from all, and you and I have talked about this on our respective channels a great deal, that this year all the outer planets have been back and forwards, end of the old sign, beginning of the new, ending, beginning, ending, beginning. And it's also a 9-year in numerology, so it's the ending. But we get into next year, and as of the 26th of April, when Uranus moves into Gemini fully, they're all in their new signs for the rest of their cycle. And it's a 1 year, 2026, add them up in 1 year. So it's a fresh, new, fast, new beginning year. And principally they're in air and fire. That's fast from the kind of sludge of a lot of the earth and water we've had in the past. So it has a very different energy, which is exciting and fast moving and collaborative and community based and heart based. I really feel that the heart is going to be activated through this period, and the more we can get into heart coherence through strong breath work or whatever practice you've got, meditation, then that is going to, we've then got our launch pad for 2026, which I think will be a huge year with a lot more obvious new beginnings happening, particularly if you're not in fear, particularly if you're in faith and love and joy. It's going to be a big new beginning year that's going to feel very different, very exciting. I think we're going to see a lot more green shoots of what we call New Earth, which is actually an embodied internal frequency, but we start to see the manifestations much more externally next year. I don't know how you feel about that, Stefan.
Yeah, I mean, we got a preview this summer. That's what I'm feeling, and I also get the sense that this final dip into these earth and water elements, which I love, um, but that's like figure out now how to get your body on a really good autopilot
Yeah.
where you are, let's say, doing your breath work every day, or you're going for your walk, or if you're more active, you're going to the gym, something like that. Give your body that sort of nourishment that it needs. Also the food nourishment, like get that figured out, right? What I've been thinking recently about what your tally is. Like, so your tally is great because you've been vegetarian now for 50 years. I've oscillated between being plant-based and then also eating meat. But just recently, I've been like thinking I really need to reduce that consumption because I have a lot of plants. I like planting things. I have a green thumb. I've created a lot of life, but there certainly I have debts as well. And we need to be mindful of this. Like God is merciful too, but like if we have consciousness, we need to really think how can we thread that needle of being healthy, but also being respectful of life in general and not unnecessarily causing harm or death. And I always think if I do have any sort of meat, I always think I pray for the animal and I pray for, I say, if you choose to come back, then I wish, all these things upon you. It'll be like happiness, bliss, community, safety, security, like all the good things, right? Love. And then I also, it's like, and no matter where you are, I wish upon you higher consciousness. So I always give those blessings out. Um, but there's also just like a simple tally aspect. And maybe it's time for us to really improve our collective tally, individual and collective tally a lot more. And then emotions, I've been talking, everyone talks to people, but I've just had some conversations recently where I'm like, wait, you got back with this person like how many times? Like, aren't they like
Yeah. Slow learner. Yeah.
like did you learn like the second time? Like there's this emotional like just tearing people up. It's like let's you can find your sovereignty and like let's get like emotionally secure, right? Put that on autopilot too. You know what you like, you have boundaries, but also are very open and accept what happens. You fine letting things go, but you're also there to create and have fun and play. And like let's get all those things on autopilot so then that higher consciousness can come through, which would be fire element. So again, earth is body, water is elements, if we're using a very simple breakdown for all the viewers here. Air would be the air mental element, and then fire is that spiritual element. And through that new awakened consciousness, understanding of what is your consciousness, what are the other consciousness fields, and what is your true soul purpose life mission, how can you then apply your mental facilities with the other two on a really nice autopilot, right? So to be mindful of this, but how can you then apply that forward? Because we are going more and more mental themes with the internet and all these new tools of creation coming out. I mean, both of our channels are seeing these AI videos come out and them copying content, but you can also use it to create new original things or to help you with data processing. So there's like benevolent uses of it as well, rather than just lazy uses. Um, but that seems to be like a really big push forward. And I think it requires, I hope people are just feeling inspired. Um, I had this dream a few months ago about inspiration, and I woke up feeling amazing. Like it was like one of the best feelings, but it was all about inspiration. Like this is next year is like really right now is the time period of inspiration. Like what can we achieve individually, collectively? We don't have to settle for less or for what has been. It's time to really like embrace potential of what can be, and that feels very interstellar, galactic, these other star systems around us, Pleiades and um, Lyria, and just, there's this idea of star seeds and how there's Pleiadians and all this, and there's a lot of interesting things there and fun stuff there. But I certainly do sense that there are very strong fields of consciousness throughout the entire universe, right? And those areas nearby are really influence us to a very strong degree, and they are there to some degree. They're going through their own things too, but they are there, and they're we're just a small little system. If you look at it from a scientific perspective, like our sun is just kind of by itself, just like roaming around with its planets. It's like got its family there, right? They all work together. That like you go to the Pleiades, I mean, there's like 400 plus stars, a lot of them much bigger, brighter, higher vibration. So, I mean, imagine what like the dynamics of a place like that in regards to some things we're talking about and even beyond. So we're kind of in the backwoods, and that's a good thing, I think. But also there's this greater wave coming through, it seems, that we're going to become a brighter, more luminous system overall.
I really, really agree. I think that this very strong sense I have of reconnecting to our galactic family is, it's really palpable for me. And the fact they've discovered recently RNA in meteorites, and these are, the building blocks of life. And I was talking to Dr. Jude Currivan, the cosmologist, about it, and she said, well, this is proof that, we came from the stars, the iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones. It's all proof that we came from the out there. And we've just had this kind of insular, almost arrogance that, we're kind of separate and in some way superior, whereas I actually think versus where we were in ancient history and where we are versus nature and the animals, we're absolute barbarians, I think. So I think we've got some catching up to do in terms of reconnecting to our galactic family. But I truly do think that, there are many people who for years have channeled the Arcturians or the Andromedans or the Sirians or the Pleiadians, whoever. And so I think that is just a moment away, that we're going to have these reconnections, and then our consciousness will really jump. That's where I think the jumps are going to happen. And with Uranus in Gemini, I literally read that as galactic communication, and that's going to start to happen to more and more people in a very rapid and exciting way. More and more people are suddenly starting to speak light language. Where has that come from? And so the more we can, if the galactic beings wanted to polish us off, they've had about 300,000 years to do it, and they haven't done it yet. So I wouldn't worry. Don't worry about the little green men polishing you off. So I think if we just welcome in this higher level of consciousness, which they must have, I think they're way more advanced than we are right now in our current state, then that can only be of benefit to us. And I think they are almost entirely benevolent. Yes, as you said earlier, Stefan, I think there's a couple of dodgy ones, but we get that in any kind of cross section. But I think overall they are cheering us on, because as I understand it, Earth's evolution at this time, this very concentrated period of accelerated evolution, which I see over these next 3 years, that isn't just for us and Earth, it's for the entire cosmos. It's the whole lot. And that's why how we behave as humanity on Earth is so pivotal to what happens in the rest of the cosmos. And I've talked to Dr. David Clements about that as well. So it's a big deal. It's a big show. It's massively exciting. So, and that's why I think it's the opportunity literally of many lifetimes, and possibly even a completely unique opportunity to really make this consciousness jump, which we are literally right in right now, in the mush of the chrysalis. We're right in it. And I just feel so excited that it's going to happen in our lifetime, that we could go from a regular old 3D human being to something much more evolved with an expanded consciousness. And I truly believe that's right on our doorstep. Don't you feel that?
I don't know, but I definitely sense a lot of acceleration in the direction of our understanding of consciousness, and more so than understanding, like our experience of it. Um, and so I think, yeah, I I don't we'll find out. Hopefully we make it there. I think tying into all this, and you talk about this all the time, are the trans-Newtonian objects and the sedenoids more. and they also are lining up with this, but showing that's even larger wave than just like this year, next year. Um, and that makes sense because for great changes to unfold, it's going to take a little bit of time. But them coming in so close in their orbit, and their discovery seems to be really, really significant. And Sedna last being as perihelion was right around the time of Göbekli Tepe, which I went to twice, 2 days back to back, and just connected with that energy. And it had a very strong Promethean energy signature there. Um, I called it a yang sky temple, but very much felt that. And this is all, yeah, this is a very Promethean time right now. Um,
It's coming back to perihelion 2076, isn't it? So it's advancing now.
yeah. So, is there anything you'd like to discuss as it relates to the TNOs and the setinoids and just I've just been spending a tremendous amount of my time kind of just expanding my awareness out beyond, which is why I think so many people are resonating with it because that's kind of I think maybe that's like the one of the base calls of humanity throughout the ages that for thousands of years we've looked up at the sky and wondered. And so everyone has that so deep baked within them. Um, and you've been feeling it too, and you've been looking at these objects really in depth.
Yeah, I love them. I just put an update out earlier this afternoon, and I was talking about how much I feel the Lemurian energy coming back in because Homer is very activated in that finger of God, finger of fate right now, will be for the next 3 years. And Homer, as you well know, Stefan, is linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility, and Hawaii was said to be, one of the last land remnants of ancient Lemuria and the Mu people. So
Oh,
that's
really?
super.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, didn't you know that? Oh, okay. Yeah.
No.
So, oh, okay. If you listen to Keone Hanulai, who Heather Ensworth interviews a lot, he's a descendant from the Mu people.
Okay.
And so it's very linked into Lemurian heritage, and so Haumea super activated right now, Mars conjunct as well, and but the finger of God, finger of fate will go on really till 2027 and even a bit beyond. And also we've got this new kid on the block, this new sednoid of Lele Aku Honua, and I only learned recently that for them to do those Kalia birds to do that migration from the Arctic to Hawaii, Hawaii again, we've got that coming in. They have to go through a cellular change for these tiny birds to make that several day flight to, because there's no stopping off point. They've got to keep going to Hawaii. So it's very much bringing that Lemurian energy, but it's bringing up also this idea of, with Homer, there's a sense of regeneration because of her myths. With Lele Aqua Honua, they have to go through the cellular change. That comes to its perihelion in 2078, just 2 years after Sedna. And with Sedna, the whole myth is about metamorphosis, how she changed her state into these beautiful sea creatures of dolphins and whales, which are very linked to Lemurian energy. Dolphins and whales, which are very linked to Salacia as well in myth, which is exactly very tightly conjunct this full supermoon in Aries. So you've got some very strong energy of ancient Lemuria, regeneration, metamorphosis, biological change as themes coming in round about this time. And so that excites me because I honestly do feel in my bones we're going to make some kind of a biological leap and a consciousness leap, so that a year from now, if you and I are sitting talking, we're going to be different people in a very different state by then.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was just in Hawaii for a month, and energies there are the Big Island specifically, because I've been to Hawaii before, and but the Big Island, last time I was there was like 16, 17, but I was there for nearly a month this time, and went to Volcanoes National Park a couple times, but I basically explored all the island, met a lot of incredible people, um, who are really understanding of this, everything we're talking about, and pursuing their God-given gifts. And I mean, I met Um, one girl that I'm working with now, she's a subscriber to the channel, Alohi. She makes these amazing natural like herbal products and cream stuff, which is like better than anything you can buy in a store. So I'm hoping to offer her stuff on my website, because that's really one of the goals of my website, Earth Evolution, is to bring in all these products from others, like the best of the best. And then I met this guy in Hawaii too, Rafi, who has all these incredible food products. And I know quite a bit about this stuff because of my journey with the body, exercise, gut health, and everything. But I love it when I meet someone that knows more than me. It's like, great, I know enough to know that you're really good, right? And so he's figured out like specifically how to take, let's say, like kale or broccoli or any of these things and dehydrate them in such a way to reduce the oxalates, which are these
Oh,
little
really? Yeah, 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 yeah.
crystals, which can be over time stressful to the body, but is because it's a defense compound. But there's so much nutrition and protein and all this good stuff, let's say with kale. But it's like, hey, I found a way to take this. It's not raw, it's just slightly, very slight. It's not cooked though. It's like just a slightly higher temperature that breaks down the oxalates. It's actually better in many aspects. Then, for example, it takes like all the different seeds and nuts and it will sprout them, but then also infuse them with amino acids. And so effectively, he has all these different products like protein powders and stuff. But one of them is called the Bread of Life. And I tried it and it's like, I mean, it's amazing. The nutrition list, the macros. I mean, the guy invented lembas. And I've mentioned this before from Lord of the Rings, though, like that bread that you take a nibble and you can like last all day. Like he's effectively created that as best as possible. And so there seems to be this energy on the Big Island of that's leading people forward. And I ran into so many subscribers there too. So people there are like interested in nature, the cosmos, all the elements from balance, the energy and the field around the volcanoes and Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of lava, like that was very strong and powerful. I went there, connected to that instantly. It was like, whoa, okay, there's like a lot here. So yeah, I find it interesting that via myth that's like one of the last fragments of Lemuria. I'm not too much of an expert on that, but I think there's a little bit of truth or interest, or a lot, it depends on in all these different myths and legends. Um, but that really seems to be the direction that we need to go, where we're in greater connection with nature, and we're also applying that Promethean like genius energy to what our passions are. I think everyone has that within them.
I think that's, you've described it so beautifully, and that is the kind of life I think many people would love. Back in connection to nature, in connection to the skies, because the astronomical place that you went to when you were out there was just amazing, wasn't it? The whole observatory there. So it's that kind of earth heaven connection that I think we are yearning for, that we felt so separated, and of course we've been encouraged to feel separated, but there's now such a desire for reconnection to each other and to the earth and to the heavens. And it was interesting listening to Keone talking to Heather Ensworth, who you know, and he was saying to her, all the land masses of ancient Lemuria are still here. It's just because humanity has fallen from love, we can't see them anymore. But once we reconnect to love, we will see them again,
Hmm.
which is, I think, really beautiful. And it may literally mean we see land masses coming up from the sea, which I think is very possible with all this future seismic activity that we're sort of entering into. But yeah, I think that that model of ancient Lemuria is about the best template we have for our future. So it isn't just an evolution forwards, it's an involution back to some of the ancient wisdom. And all, I mean, humanity in ancient times, they were way ahead of where we are now. Look at the Göbekli Tepe, as you say, the pyramids, all of the incredible ancient wisdom and technology which they had. And people say that we are at the highest point of civilization. Well, I think we're probably at the lowest, to be honest. there's so much we can learn by the remembrance. And I think that is being stirred in our DNA as well, that ancient wisdom. And Hawaii would be just the most amazing place to be, I think, to live with that sense of connection. And also, isn't it quite magnetic as well? I think it's quite magnetic, Stefan. Do you know that?
What do you mean by magnetic?
Well, I think wherever you've had a lot of volcanic activity, it's often the ground is quite magnetic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There would be a lot of remnant magnetization that will, yeah, because it's just a lot of uh titanomagnetite, and then even more powerful in terms of its magnetic properties, just regular magnetite that comes up through these lavas. And specifically, Hawaii is connected to a plume hotspot system that feeds directly from the core. Um, and I have some certain thoughts there. There's the traditional geologic model basically has these things starting at the core mantle boundary, and the outer core is more viscous and is this geodynamo, and then the inner core is more solid. But it seems to me that Earth's interior is one giant energy engine. And we have these overabundances of like helium and hydrogen and light elements in the core, which doesn't make sense because of their density. Like they're so light that why are they in the densest part of the Earth? So what makes sense though is that, well, they're being generated through like nuclear processes, and then those streaming out from the core regions is what drives some of this convection. There's other processes too, but that would be probably one of the main things that drives convection, and also the movement of the this like light element slurry, which a lot of them are charge carriers. They'll be broken into charge carriers, would also generate a magnetic field. So that could explain the magnetic field. Then it could also explain how that changes across time, excursions, reversals, because that's like the engines turning on, stopping, this whole deal. Um, Sometimes Earth just needs a rest. Like when I on Saturday when I had my experience, there's one point where I was lying down. We went to the beach, and you feel everything more. And I couldn't feel my heart rate for a moment. And it really, and I was just breathing very low and slow. And I naturally hold my breath at the bottom, which is interesting you mentioned that. But it was an opportunity that like my consciousness had expanded a bit beyond the body. And so my heart was like, great, I can like just kind of turn off for like 3, 4 seconds here. Like, don't worry, I'll turn back on. But I can finally get like 3 seconds of rest. That's all I need, right? I think it's the same for the Earth. Like these reversals is like it just needs just a little bit of time to reformat, and then the field comes out and it usually strengthens higher than it was as it was dipping down into the low. Um, so yeah, Hawaii, and then Hawaii's magnetic also just in terms of pooling people there or like pushing them out if they're not foreign. That's actually a lot of islands, if you have experience with that. Like Bali's the same. A lot of islands have this attraction and repulsion energy. That's very magnetic, like just in terms of the physics. Um,
So, in terms of the core of the Earth, Stefan, is that actually expanding right now?
that's probably the case. I We have these models, and we rely too much on models. Some the what I really like is when we have direct observations, which we get from the magnetic field, also observations from earthquakes and the sound waves and how they propagate through, and we can look at the waveforms on the other side of the Earth. But then also we can take mineral assemblages and put them in a lab under pressure and temperature and see how they undergo phase changes and stuff. So you piece those together, and then you kind of like make a model that hopefully like threads the needle. That's kind of, I think, probably a good way to do that. But I'm no expert modeler. I'm more of a big picture guy. I'm like, I zoom out and try to understand the system and do more of a connect to it consciously, just to be like, hey, what's the answer?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, 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 yeah,
and then Earth is like, here's the answer. If you ask
yeah, yeah,
nicely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It seems I've been working because the track record on my channel, what I've done is pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty
Oh, it's
good.
amazing. You're in a perfect position to connect all those different modalities as well. I think you're doing absolutely brilliantly with that. So yeah, you've
But
been on the money with those earthquakes.
And so if they're based off of, so to say that based off of some of this laboratory evidence and stuff, yeah, there is this aspect of you can get the inner core to slowly, very slowly grow and undergo crystallization. It's very crystalline. Like every single model that we have of the inner core basically has it in these really intricate crystalline structures. One of them is like a hexagonal iron nickel combination. So it's like honeycomb. It's like a honeycomb crystal structure. So it's not just like amorphous and random. It's like extremely structured. And then there seems to be uh, our best understanding is that there's probably crystal growth that's occurring. And then um, as it relates to the mantle and other stuff, I mean, here's like an interesting thing. There's some estimates are that there is like 2 to 3 oceans worth of water in the mantle.
Is that
Um,
primary water?
it's locked in some mineral bonds, typically as like a hydroxyl group, so an OH.
Right.
But it's also not necessarily impossible to liberate, you could say. So we had these periods back in the past where like sea level is much higher, and if you look at our ice caps right now, if you were to melt them all, like it could give a certain level of sea level rise, but if you were to simply somehow some radiative process probably coming in from beyond the Earth, whether this is driven by the sun or driven from interstellar environment, because that's what everything's floating upon at the end of the day. The Earth is floating upon that heliospheric energy field, which is just a little bubble floating upon the interstellar. And the solar system gestated with that information, just as we gestated, within the womb and the like the cellular electric currents in the body, right, informs the growth of the embryo, the fetus embryo, more and guides cell division and the expression of DNA. It's like Robert Becker you go look into. Um, so I think it's very much the same. I think interstellar space and intracellular space is basically super, super resonant and symmetric and fractal. And so if that's changing, how is that influence the deep Earth? And so if there is somehow, let's call it a radiative influence that's able to maybe adjust these hydroxyl bonds, you could have water actually just seeping out of the Earth itself. It doesn't need to like be ice melting that causes the ocean to rise or fall. It could just be this expansion out from the oceanic crust just everywhere, and probably primarily through hotspots and more too, like these natural flows. But um, it just opens up the possibility of Earth being much more dynamic than we thought previously. And I think there's a lot of realms of possibility and potential for Earth, and she's at all times kind of thinking, well, what can I do? Like, what do I want to be, but how can I take what the life that I have along for the ride in the most benevolent way? Um, so you see some of these things like Edgar Casey has this prediction of like the America after some sort of flood or something, and the map kind of doesn't make sense, but maybe there's some other geologic processes that are possible. But I think all these things unfold across time scales much more vast than the human one typically. And so maybe Edgar Casey had some vision, but it wasn't necessarily like 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now. And maybe that's what he wrote down, but maybe he saw deep into the future, deep into the past, and we just maybe mislabeled it or something. But
And talking of Edgar Casey, Stefan, I don't know if you're aware, but I discovered just, I think, yesterday, he died in 1945. And in his writings, he predicted that on the 29th of October, 2025, a blade of light would appear in the sky.
oh, so 29th. So on the on the perihelion of Atlas.
On the perihelion, and he predicted that obviously before his death in 1945, and it was mentioned at a recent Lazarus symposium. I was trying to get a link for our conversation here, but it couldn't get a link because they didn't have access to the recording, but it was mentioned there and it's in his writings. So that's another little a little snippet to throw in for the Atlas perihelion.
Yeah, for people to research into. This would be a good opportunity for anyone to research into these things and then take what they find and leave it as a comment in maybe either one of our videos. And because this is a group collective effort here, not just you or me. So I mean, we keep talking about a lot of things, but is there anything else that's on your mind that you want to add to the discussion, that you feel like could be helpful or informative, Pam?
I think I think the thing I would say, which is what I always come back to, is in these present times, just keep using a rolling mantra, if you can't think of anything better, of we're welcoming in an ever expanding consciousness of love, and that will see you on a good path. Do not go into fear about anything. Switch off the news. I got rid of my television 5 years ago when all that silly stuff started, and just stay in those positive emotions and do anything that takes you to that point, and try and cultivate a kind of beginner's mind of, when you're out in nature, don't just think, oh, that's an oak tree or that's a beech tree. Look at it as if it were the very first time and really drink in how magnificent and beautiful that is. And I think the beginner's mind will help us a lot. But just, even if everything that everybody was envisaging and saying out there in public land wasn't the case, we as humanity could create it. We as humanity are powerful enough to come together and create a magnificent future. And it doesn't take the majority of humanity. It actually takes quite a small number of us. So, that's my call, to all of you out there. And I've got a daily meditation, 7 p.m. UK time, 15 minutes for free. Thousands of people join that and are having the most amazing experiences. And you couldn't do anything better or easier, I think. If you want to help people in the Middle East, want to help people in tough circumstances, just do that. We can all do that for free at home. So that's my plea. And I've loved our conversation. It went to places we didn't quite expect, maybe, but it was very different from your normal videos and certainly my normal videos. So I thank you for that, Stefan. I hope people enjoy it as much as I have.
Yeah, I've always been very holistic, and I think it's important to bring all these things together because when I typically will make a video, I mean, I often have videos like this, but sometimes they're more like cut and dry scientific or maybe more cut and dry spiritual, whatever. But it's usually just one small fraction of actually what I'm thinking about at the time, and it's all linked together. So this was a video where we could do that because we had our own experiences, thoughts, and this topic of three-eye atlas and all the conjunctions right now, which seem to be just really powerful. But yeah, I just to piggyback, you said like even if all these things don't come true, I think there's a little bit of a setup for disappointment just in general. Like right now, there's a lot of things going around about like rapture. And like people are making videos like rapture is going to be tomorrow. It's like, well, it's 2 days now. So it didn't happen. But if if what you've just in general, if you somehow make some big life change that sets you up to be so much happier and healthier and more fulfilled and self-actualized, then do you need do you need to be some floating light orb that's speaking with everyone telepathically simultaneously? Like no, like the thing happened. So there's all these novel ideas. Maybe eventually we'll get there. I don't know. I'm simply just like an I don't know. I love the open, curious perspective. I feel so much love and joy in that headspace and that kind of that perspective, just that place, that space, you could say. But if all this inspiration leads to an actual beneficial or many beneficial outcomes, then that's the whole point of it. So
100%. And I'm not envisaging a rapture event. I actually felt the state I think we'd all like to be in France recently in June when I was on the shamanic retreat. I felt that all of us, all the 18 of us that had embodied New Earth. It was beautiful. We were blissful. We cared about each other. We came together in laughter and joy and love. And that was it. It was that simple. It wasn't rapture, it wasn't complicated, it was that simple. And that's what I'd encourage people to focus on, because that's highly achievable, I think, for many of us.
Yeah, and something I was going to mention earlier, but touches on that, like my study of the Neolithic, a lot of people are focusing on like ancient history and what happened before Göbekli Tepe and like Younger Dryas and things of that nature, and like when were the pyramids built and everything. But even I've just always found this draw to the Neolithic period, which is like 6,000 BCE, 4,000 BCE, because there's almost no evidence of warfare. They had these very elaborate religious ceremonies, and they had it's a pretty fair and decentralized and like equal societal structure. And so, yeah, to carry on your point, like, were the barbarians like, yeah, maybe they didn't have computer or something like that, but in terms of their understanding of the Earth, the place within it, our place within the Earth, the solar system, the cosmos, living in nature and peace and harmony together, like, we could do much worse than the Neolithic.
Exactly, exactly. It's simple. It's not kind of pie in the sky. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's really simple. And it's kind of how I spend my days largely as well.
With the added benefit that we can talk from different parts of the world. So thank you so
Much
much,
love.
Pam. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you
it was
so much,
great.
Pam, for being on the video and for me being on yours. And yeah, everyone, Pam Gregory Official is her channel, and mine is Stefan Burns. And hope to see you all very, very soon.
Thank you, Stefan. Loved it. Much love to everybody.